All right, this is a nice one to finish the day with, I reckon, and it's called the transforming power of gratitude. And I've been thinking about this for quite a number of years. I teach on it a lot, and I've incorporated it into my own life with good effect. So I hope you get heaps out of it, and that it really does get into your minds and hearts as a practice that we can develop in our lives. So, have you ever asked the question, what is God's will for me? You find yourself asking that question. And we're usually thinking on a large scale, like what job does he want me to have? Who does he want me to marry? What does he want me to do vocation-wise? So there's this question, and it's a good question. But interestingly, I'm going to share you a little secret. It comes from 1 Thessalonians 5:18. It says, "Thank God in everything, no matter what the circumstances may be thankful and give thanks, for this is the will of God for you." So if you can't work out what the broader will of God is in your life, start here. That developing an attitude of thankfulness is actually the will of God. And we find in Philippians 4:8, that beautiful passage, it says, "For the rest, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of reverence and is honourable and seemly, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely and lovable, whatever is kind and winsome and gracious, if there is any virtue and excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think on and weigh and take account on these things." And I love the Amplified, "fix your mind on them." All right, so we're being instructed very carefully that it is God's clear, unequivocal commandment that we cultivate an attitude of gratitude and thankfulness, and that we train ourselves to intentionally focus on the good and the positive. If you're doing that, you can know that you are in the will of God. But we have a problem as human beings, and it's called the negativity bias. So what you can see here is a picture of our brain, and it's got the magnifying glass out, and it's focusing on the bad. And there's all of these good things over there, but our brain just doesn't seem to go there, right? And this is universal. The negativity bias is actually a well-known, researched fact. And psychologist Rick Hansen, he says that our brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and like Teflon for positive ones, right? That the negatives stick, right? It's so much easier to notice and remember negative information than it is to notice and absorb positive information. And this is just out of one of his articles. He says, in your own mind, what do you usually think about at the end of the day? The 50 things that went right or the one that went wrong? Like the guy who cut you off in traffic, what you wish you had said differently to a coworker, or the one thing on your to-do list that didn't get done? And that's just not fair, since probably most of the facts in your life are positive or neutral. Every day, lots of good things happen, such as a lovely sunset, someone is nice to you, you finish a batch of emails, or you learn something new, and lots of other good things are ongoing aspects of your world. For instance, your children are healthy, life is peaceful in your corner of the planet, or yourself, your personal qualities like determination, sincerity, fairness, and kindness. All right, so we tend to get locked in on the negative. Now, the secular world has an explanation for this. Why the negativity bias? And I call this the non-biblical explanation, and this again comes from Rick Hansen. He says, scientists believe that your brain has a built-in negativity bias. In other words, and here it is, as we evolved over millions of years, dodging sticks and chasing carrots, it was a lot more important to notice, react to, and remember sticks than it was for carrots. That's because in the tough environments in which our ancestors lived, if they missed out on a carrot, they usually had a shot at another one later on. But if they failed to avoid a stick, a predator, a natural hazard, or aggression from others of their species, wham, no more chances to pass on their genes. So that's a secular, evolutionary viewpoint. And it does have intellectual appeal. I get that, right? That it makes sense. If you're a person coming out of a cave and there's a beautiful rainbow over here and a saber-toothed tiger on this side, you want to pay attention to the saber-toothed tiger, all right? Because there'll always be a chance for another rainbow, but if you don't pay attention to that tiger, game over, all right? So that it does have intellectual appeal, and probably as a survival thing, there is some truth to this. But there is actually, I think, a better biblical explanation for the negativity bias. And it's this: we are drawn to focus on negatives because they feel instinctively wrong according to our original design, which was for perfection. And I'm actually in the process over the last few years of trying to write a book. It's a long process, I've discovered. But on a chapter on gratitude that I wrote, I wrote this. So I'm kind of quoting myself here. I look back on it because I hadn't read it for a while. I thought, that's pretty good, Scott. I like it. So let me read. Somewhere deep inside all of us is an ancient awareness, an inner knowing that we were made for perfection. This awareness haunts us with the sense that life is meant to be glorious, filled with love, joy, peace, and adventure, and that everything should be good, fair, and right. Therefore, anything short of this instinctively feels wrong, out of place, not right, disjointed. And this grabs our attention. Have you ever had a piece of food stuck between your teeth? What happens? You cannot stop picking at it with your tongue, finger, or some other implement, right? Your attention keeps being drawn to it over and over. Have you ever been in a room where there is a picture that is badly crooked on the wall? You find yourself inexplicably focused on it, even if everything else in the room is in order, because you know that's not how it's supposed to be. It should be straight.
Yes.
Or for the perfectionist in the room. Yeah? So, oops, going too fast here. So our sense of how things are meant to be causes us to be instinctively drawn to focus on things that are not as they should be. And in the world we currently inhabit, the subject matter is endless. The people, organisation and services we depend on are not as they should be. They let us down, get it wrong and make mistakes. Our possessions are not as they should be. They inevitably have faults, get old or break down. Nature is not as it should be. It can be cruel, brutal and destructive. For goodness sakes, we are not as we should be. We can be fickle, impulsive, mean-spirited and sometimes act contrary to our values. On some level, something is wrong with everything. Nothing is perfect, at least not for long. And yet something inside us keeps wishing, but it should be. This isn't right. And this lassoes our focus and reels it into the things that feel out of place. You get that? Right? I think that is the true source of our negativity bias. It's like, that's not right. Yeah? And properly handled, I think the imperfection of this world is actually meant to break our attachment to this world. Right? It's meant to help us to realize, wait a minute, this is not my true life. It's meant to create that pilgrim mindset. We are aliens and strangers in this world. Don't make it our home. Right? Don't settle your roots down here. Right? And it's almost like the negatives can help with that. Right? So that our focus is homeward, heavenward, and not on this veil of tears that we currently live in. So I think properly handled, it can be a good thing. But when we just get caught in the negativity bias and we're focused on negative things, it's obviously not good. Because I just realised I didn't bring up my prop. Give me a moment. It'll go into my bag. Got to not fall over. These are poop emojis, in case you didn't notice. The poop-coloured lens. This is what we can fall into, is that we're looking at the world through a lens that is really negative. So left unchallenged, has that got a bit of a ring to it? Or is it just from my side of things? Left unchallenged, the negativity bias will have us viewing life through a lens that is attuned to and focuses on what we haven't got, what isn't right, what's wrong with us and others, and everything that's wrong in the world. Left unchallenged, that's where it can go. And there's two major consequences to a negative lens. And these, it's a bit like the things I said on acceptance last night, right at the start. There's sort of like truths that you can take to the bank. These are two truths that you can take to the bank. I talk about them a lot, actually. And the first is that whatever I focus on grows. That is a truth. Whatever gets your attention and you're focused on, you are energetically feeding. All right, so I'm going to give you an example of this. Let's take this little book here. This happens to be a little gratitude journal. I'll come back to this later. That's not a huge object, right? It's pretty small. But if I begin to focus on this and focus on it and focus on it and focus on it, how big do you think it is to me now? It's huge, right? And this is what happens, is that whatever we focus on in our experience gets bigger and bigger, right? Whatever we focus on grows. So if we're wearing the poop-coloured lenses and we're attuned to what isn't good, what isn't right, things about ourselves, the world, others, then in our experience, that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Thankfully, it works in the reverse, right? That if we begin to attune our lives to what's good, we begin to feed that, and that gets bigger. So what you appreciate, appreciates, right? So that's the good news. The second thing about a negative lens and the downside of it is that attention equals memory. So to prove this to you, have any of you had the experience that you get home and you put down your phone or your keys, and then a little while later you just can't remember where you put them? Had that experience? Where's my keys? Where's my phone? All right? The reason you can't remember where they are is because you didn't pay attention when you put them down. All right? So if this was my phone, and I come in at the end of the day and I just plonk it down there and I'm talking to my kids or getting distracted in some other activity, I'll go, where's my phone? All right? But if I came in and I went, okay, I put my phone there, I go away, I've encoded that in my memory, and so I'm much more likely to remember it. So what we pay attention to is what we remember. Now this has huge implications, right? Because if we're walking through life, and we've got our poop-coloured lens on, right, and we're attending to negatives all the time, that's all that's going in and being encoded. So let's say you get to the end of the day after doing that, and your partner, your spouse, your kids ask you, how was your day? You consult through your memory banks, you go, it was terrible. It's awful, right? And there may have been a bunch of good stuff that happened, but if we weren't paying attention to it, it wasn't encoded. Right? And so if we do this enough, we begin to fill our entire brains with negative information, right? Which colours our entire experience of life. So I remember where I put this. I want to prove this to you with a little video. So in a moment, you're going to be asked to, it'll repeat these instructions, but you're going to be asked to count the number of passes, right? There's two groups of people, one group in black, the other group in white, and they're going to be passing basketballs. You've got to count the number of passes that the team in white makes and be as accurate as you can. You ready?
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. This is an ad for cyclists. But everyone see the bear the second time? I had the little radar light on it. This is a phenomenon we call selective attention, right? And it's mainly a good thing. I mean, if we were constantly taking in every single thing that's coming at us through our eyes and senses, our brain would get overwhelmed. So we do have to selectively attend and screen out information. But the issue is with the topic we're looking at today, is that just like when you only focused on the team in white, you just did not even see the moonwalking bear. It might as well not have existed, all right? This is what happens when we've got our poop-coloured lenses on and we're looking at all the negatives, that the good stuff that's happening all the time, it's like it does not even exist, all right? It just blocks it out. And so what we need to cultivate to be to fulfill the scripture of focusing on thankfulness is I think this is probably the truest approach to life, is like this. Right? And what this means is we need to open up our capacity to focus on the good. But it doesn't mean that we develop what they call toxic positivity, which is where we begin to ignore the negatives and, oh, that doesn't exist, and never speak or talk about negative stuff. Sometimes that needs our attention, right? The bad stuff does need our attention to respond to. But for most of us, we don't need to work on that. We need to work on this, right? The rose-coloured glass, and to cultivate that. And I think that's the truest approach to life, because life is... There's a lady called Glennon Melton Doyle. She says that life is brutiful. It's brutal, and it's beautiful. It's brutiful. You know, and I think that's what that represents. And that's a true way of viewing life. So let's talk about how we can really cultivate this. Actually, before we do that, I just want to show you some pictures. Because these pictures, they're kind of entertaining, but they're also, I think, a good representation of what life is like, that there's multiple ways of looking at life or focusing our attention. And it just brings that to the surface. So what do you see? Just call it out. Yep, so there's two Mexicans, yeah. Golden vase in the middle. The old couple on the big macro level. Girl in the archway, the doorway, yeah, which is the old man's ear.
Is that a bottle?
Yes, and you can see like a bottle as an earring, yeah. Yep, the chalice in the middle. So depending on where you focus your attention is what you see. And they're all right, yeah? What do you see when you look at this one? Just looks like some mountains reflecting in some water, yeah? Sorry? Jabba the Hutt. Yeah, kind of. So what I want you to do is I want you to tip your head 90 degrees to the left. What do you see now?
Yeah, temple statue, some kind of Hindu statue or something.
Yeah, so it's like a lady and a child in like a prayer position. Yeah? And then tip your head the other way. 90 degrees to the right. You see an owl. All right, the owl's head is there. Yeah. So depending on the way you're looking at this picture is what you see. Yeah. This is a bit of a classic one. The old lady, young lady. So people really struggle with this one, actually. So the old lady is facing directly side on to us. So, flick in here. So this is her mouth and chin, big chin, and her nose, and her eye is there. But if it's the young lady, she's actually facing off out that way.
Yeah, the mouth is the necklace.
The mouth is her, yeah, it's her necklace. Yeah. Yeah. How about this one? This is the truth about life. Good and evil, depending on whether you focus on the black part or the white part. Yeah? And that is life. Like, depending on how you look at life, you can be focused on the good or you can be focused on the bad. Both are in existence, but where do we want to primarily focus our attention? So life is like this, is that as we're looking out on the world at all times, right, there are different ways of viewing, different ways of focusing our attention that sort of bring different emotional results for us. So how do we cultivate an attitude of gratitude? Because that's ultimately what it's about, to fulfill that command of God, the will of God, to be thankful and to focus on what we can appreciate. Well, I'm going to show you a few things, and we're going to start with what is really in the field of psychology, the prototypical tool for gratitude cultivation, and it's called the Gratitude Journal. So in its simplest form, what we do is we just set aside 5 free minutes each night, preferably right before we go to bed, and we simply write down 3 to 5 things that we're grateful for. So yeah, that can just be in general. The best way to do it, but is actually to focus on things that are particular to that day. So you're really starting to notice what's unique to each day. So it doesn't matter if there's some repetition. However you can, try and keep it fresh by noticing more and more things. But the important thing is that you choose to turn your mind to and appreciate the good things in your life. And guess what? I mean, some of you will be familiar with the term neuroplasticity, which is a somewhat recent discovery in psychiatry and psychology, which is about that we can actually rewire our brain and form new neural pathways. This is a way of doing that. It actually rewires the brain more towards the positive as we train our brains to do that. And I can vouch for that. I've done a lot of gratitude journaling over the years, off and on, and I know that my brain has a better ability now to notice the good when it happens and not just pass it over. Right? So it actually does train that. And I'll just give you a sample from my own little gratitude journal of what this can look like. So this is a couple of entries from this week. So, where are we? So this was on the 27th. Oh, actually, let me go back the day before. 26th. So, number one, I asked God for a word to me while driving to work, and Isaiah 41, 10 to 13 came into my mind. And I thought, oh, okay, which is about God being with us, supporting us and helping us, and do not fear. And then Paul sends out a scripture by text, and it's that exact verse. So it's like, wow, okay, there's confirmation. So I was very grateful for that. Number two, a beautiful and unexpected thank you card from a patient. Just came out of the blue and like really kind words. Number three, doing the self-sabotage groups, which I love. I love teaching on self-sabotage. Number four, barbecue chicken and salad for dinner. Yum. And number five, I had down, there's a guy I follow called Amir Safati. He's a Jewish guy. Great stuff. And he keeps me up to date on world events. And then the 27th, the next day. Number one, having lots of fun and laughter with my colleagues and patients in the day program. The food thing comes up a lot, hey? Delicious roast beef and vegetables for lunch. Number three, the privilege of having Kelly share her tough day with me and thanking me for listening. Number four, being able to listen to really interesting podcasts in the car on the way to and from work. And number five, the book of 1 Peter and how God is using it to gradually help me to accept suffering instead of running from it or thinking that it means God doesn't care about me. So it's like, it's just everyday stuff, but you're just beginning to really attune to it, right? And whatever you focus on grows. Whatever you focus on starts to go into our memory banks and form those more positive memories. So you can just do it in a little journal like this. If you've got a journal that you typically use, you can just have it as a section of it. Just, if you're writing your thoughts for the day and then you just do a little gratitude part. If you're into technology, go to the App Store or the Play Store or whatever it's called, and there's gratitude apps that you can write stuff in, take photos of things, and it stores it in there. I mean, there's a variety of different ways, but it is a training process of the mind. And research on this is really compelling. I'll just tell you one of the early studies, the seminal research on gratitude journaling. What they did is they divided participants, including those with a serious neuromuscular disease, so people that were suffering with a physical condition, and they divided them into several experimental groups. So the first group had to record things for which they were grateful every day. Second group, they had to record hassles or negative events, so they were trained to focus on the bad. All right. Third group, record things for which they felt superior or better off than others, kind of a narcissist group. And number four, people could just record anything they liked. Which group do you reckon did the best? Number one. Number two? Someone said number two. No? And this study was completed over a 2 to 3 week period. So they were tracking these people across these 4 conditions. And what they found was that the grateful group, group number one, consistently did better than any other group. They reported greater subjective well-being, higher optimism, improved physical health symptoms. Remember, people with neuromuscular disease? And better sleep quality. They're also more likely to engage in positive health behaviours like exercise and to be more benevolent and pro-social. Just like that. And study after study after study has shown very similar results. Very similar. The group that did the worst was the group that was instructed to record hassles and negative experiences. And that highlights how unhelpful it is when we focus our attention on the negatives in life. So the more we focus on the negative, the worse we do across many key factors in our life. So pretty powerful research. Actually, we're going to do a little exercise, I reckon. I'm going to throw an exercise in here. We're going to do like, yes, that there. I'm going to do a little exercise with you guys. I just call it gratitude across the realms of life, and it's like how to kick off gratitude journaling. So what it is, what you'll find when you get it, is a whole bunch of little prompts for different areas of your life where you might feel gratitude. So what in nature, who do you feel grateful for, what technology are you grateful for? And I just want to encourage you to take a few minutes and fill it out, right? As you do it, think about those things that you're writing down and savor them. All right, so it goes over a couple of pages. One of the things that I absolutely love doing when I do that exercise is actually just to sit back and watch. And what I notice is that there's lots of smiles. As you see you see the positive emotion coming more easily for people, and that's exactly the point, right? Is that as we focus on the good, it does have a tendency to stimulate more positive emotion in our life, which is good for us, right? In fact, I did this at the men's breakfast at the end of last year where I showed that the way we think actually shows up in our physiology. I'm not going to do it today, but basically it's through this thing called kinesiology. If you get somebody to hold their arm out nice and tight and you push down on it, if you get somebody to think like a really negative, upsetting thought, like I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, or whatever it is, or something you're ashamed of, the person holds their arm, while thinking of that, and I come push it down, they go real weak. If you get somebody to think about something that's empowering or good or that they're grateful for, and you actually push on their arm, they're much stronger. Like it's foolproof. It's unbelievable that our body is designed in such a way that the way we think and speak actually shows up in our physiology. It's astounding. And gratitude is a way of cultivating more strength and wellness into our entire being, which is why God commands it, because it's good for us. Right? It is actually good for us. So it was really cool to watch the smiles and the good chatter. So well done on that. I want to talk to you about another strategy. I call it the gratitude rampage. Sounds like you're really angry, but you're not. It's especially good when you're mired in negativity. But the irony is, you won't feel like doing it, right? Because we tend to want to go with our emotions. And to be grateful when you're feeling bad is hard. But this is the time where you need it the most. And what you do is you just basically spend a few minutes thinking of every single thing in your life that you can be grateful for. Right? I mean everything. Like I can walk, there's air conditioning, there's running water, I can use a toilet rather than having to go out and dig a hole. There's Panadol in the cupboard if I get a headache. Like just whatever you can think of. And I think I shared this at the men's breakfast at the end of last year, but it bears repeating. This one saved me one day. Like on an emotional level, it saved me. I'd had a really tough day at work where everything that I did just seemed to not produce any good results. And so I came home and I was like, I just felt really bad. And my mind was just ruminating on, what I did, how I could have said things better, why did that person react the way they did. And I was in a real negative spiral. And I went, I got to just do something about this. So I grabbed my dog Eddie and I went for a walk. And while I was walking, I just said to God, what can I do? And I just had the word gratitude just drop into my spirit. And I went, right, okay, I'll run with that. So I did the gratitude rampage. I just started thinking of everything that I could think of. Like footpaths I'm walking on, the trees I can see, the smells that I can smell, like just every single thing. And then I'm going back like years in my life and thinking about my childhood and some of the good memories there and my parents. And then what was really interesting is that my mind circled back to the day and I actually began to think about the few moments that day that were good rather than focusing on the stuff that wasn't good, like the positive, because there were some positives. By the time I came back from that walk, I was good. Like I actually felt entirely different in my nervous system. And I said it, I remember saying to Kelly, I'm good now. and it's because I changed the channel of my mind. All right? Now, it doesn't always work that quickly for everyone, but it can, is the point I'm making. It can be very, very helpful. So, gratitude rampage. Another one is a gratitude walk. So this is where you go for a walk around in your house, in your residence, or you can go to an outside spot somewhere where you love, and basically you just attune to everything that you can appreciate. So I'm actually, again, let's do a little practical on this, but we're going to do it in imagination. What I'm going to invite you to do is to think of either your house, your current residence, or a favourite place that you love. All right? I'm going to get you to close your eyes. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine going for a walk around that place. All right? And as you do that in your mind's eye, attune to everything that you can see there that you can express internally some gratitude towards. So for instance, if you're walking around your house, you might be noticing things like the furniture, pictures on the wall, TV, fridge, or any basic stuff. But just take a walk around in your mind's eye and just notice the good. Notice what you can appreciate. Savouring those things. Things that perhaps are so easy to take for granted. But when you notice them, you realise what they add to your life. The many blessings that God has bestowed, especially in the simple things. And as we bring this short gratitude focus to a close, just be aware that you could take this to the next level by actually doing the same process in that environment for real. All right? So we just did it in imagination, so feel free to open up your eyes, but it can be great to do it for real. Walk around your house. Wow, look at that. That's cool. You know? So it's just another little tool to help cultivate a practice of gratitude, appreciation, and thankfulness. Now, the last tool that I'm going to talk about, there's actually a lot of research done on this one as well. It's called the gratitude letter. And the basic kind of format of it is that you think of somebody living to whom you are very grateful, but whom you've never properly thanked, or you don't feel like you've got it across to them as well as you'd like. So it's going to be someone who did something that changed your life for the better. And what you do, is that you compose a letter of usually no more than 300 words, so you just want it to be about a page, so it's not an overload for the person. And you describe your gratitude, outlining things like what they did, use some specific examples, how it affected your life for good, and how much you appreciate what they've done. So I've just got this little thing to kind of kick it off, because sometimes people are not sure how to start it, but it might be something like, "Dear whoever it is, I've never taken the time to express how grateful I am for the influence you've had on my life. As I think about it, I realise I've been remiss in waiting so long to tell you how much I treasure the things you've done for me. I'm especially grateful for. You just complete that. Now, most of the research on this has been done where you actually take that letter, organise a time to meet with that person and read it to them, and then give them the letter that they can take with them. So it's kind of a very vulnerable thing to do. I've done this personally a couple of times because I try to do what I teach, and it is really awesome. It's really great for the other person, and the research, which is more focused on self, actually shows that it has ongoing benefits for you as well. Further research has shown is that even if you never send the letter, never tell the person about it, it still does you good, right? Even just to go through the exercise of writing it. But the best results are when you actually read it to the person or send it to the person, because you're blessing them, and in blessing them, you're also blessed, right? And like I said, there's really good research in the field of positive psychology around this. Think about that, doing a gratitude letter. As I said, I've done it a couple of times, and it's just a really, really good exercise to do. So as we come towards the end of this talk, I just want to point out that gratitude actually is medicine. All right? And there's been many studies done, particularly at UC Davis Medical School. I'll just give you a sample of these. Gratitude is related to a 23% lower level of the stress hormone cortisol. Cortisol is implemented, or high levels of cortisol is implemented in all sorts of problems. It certainly increases depression, anxiety problems, but suppresses the immune system, making us more prone to disease and so forth. So being grateful drops that down. Practicing gratitude led to a 7% reduction in biomarkers of inflammation in patients with congestive heart failure. Grateful people have 16% lower diastolic blood pressure and 10% lower systolic blood pressure compared to those less grateful. Oops. Grateful patients with stage B asymptomatic heart failure were 16% less depressed, 20% less fatigued, and 18% more likely to believe they could control the symptoms of their illness compared to those less grateful. Grateful people, including people grateful to God, have between 9 to 13% lower levels of hemoglobin A1C, a key marker of glucose control that plays a significant role in the diagnosis of diabetes. Gratitude is related to a 10% improvement in sleep quality in patients with chronic pain, 76% of whom had insomnia, and 19% lower depression levels. And finally, a daily gratitude practice can decelerate the effects of neurodegeneration, as measured by a 9% increase in verbal fluency that occurs with increasing age. Isn't that interesting? All right, so not only does it have emotional benefits, but also physical benefits. Gratitude is medicine. And long before this research showed this, God said it. Of course he did. In Proverbs 17:22, a happy heart is good medicine, and a cheerful mind works healing. It was in the Bible all along. All right? That mind, we talk about mind over matter and all that garbage, but mind becomes matter. Right? Where we direct our mind, particularly if we're focused on good, actually affects the matter of our body. So mind becomes matter. So let us come full circle to where we started. What is God's will for me? To be grateful. Remember, thank God in everything, no matter what the circumstances may be. Be thankful and give thanks, for this is the will of God for you. And that God wants us to focus on what is honourable and seemly and just and pure and lovable and all of those words. And we're to fix our mind on those good things. So gratitude is good for us. So I said this before, no wonder God commands it. But when I've thought deeply about this, I've realised that actually isn't the point, right? It's good, and God always does what is good for us. But actually, the main point of us being thankful and grateful is that God actually deserves that, right? God deserves and is eminently worthy of our continual thanks, and that by us being grateful, it makes the gospel more attractive to others. That's the point, right? When we are grateful and we're in a better emotional space because of that, we're more attractive. People are like, I want what that person's got, Yeah? So the fruit of it, right? It's not all about us. It's actually, in psychology, it is all about us. But from a spiritual viewpoint, it isn't. Right? We get the benefits, but it's actually about God, what he deserves and what makes his kingdom much more attractive. So, as we come to a close, these are the keys to transformation, or some of the keys to transformation that we've talked through. So we've got last night, the transforming power of acceptance, of giving up the fight with God's reality so that we can redirect our energies to what we can learn and how we can grow and adapt. We've talked about the transforming power of grace and relying on God's grace and his action in us to change those negative patterns of behaviour in our lives. We've talked about the transforming power of accepting ourselves and community and connecting with others. And we've also talked just now about the transforming power of gratitude, of tuning our minds to the good stuff. And I can guarantee you, nobody goes backwards practicing gratitude. All right? It's something that we can build into our lives, and when we're doing it in the simple ways that I've talked about, it actually really honours God, and we're fulfilling one of his wills for us. So that brings us to a close on the topics we got. And thank you very much. Thank you for listening in. And
Let's give him a hand. Thank you. Thank you.